The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales. Hello and welcome back to the Businessin Wales Podcast with me, Daniel Bevan. Now, of course, you can see we are not in the usual studio. We are at Sinclair Land Rover Swansea once again for a fantastic roundtable. This one is titled The Cost of Doing Business, and we've got a fantastic panel to have that discussion with us, but I'll let them introduce themselves in a second. The cost of doing business at the moment is the number one priority for all business owners in Wales. And with a Senedd election on the horizon and potentially a new Welsh government, and who knows, maybe one in Westminster as well, it's something that all business owners are talking to each other about. So we thought we'd bring some together to have that discussion with us, who I'm going to let introduce themselves.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for the invitation to be part of this panel today, surrounded by such esteemed people as we are. My name is Jamie Callan. I'm the head of business of Sinclair Land Rover in Swansea and Sinclair Land Rover Hyundai in Aberystwyth, and I also look after the after-sales function for our Land Rover group in the Sinclair group.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Andrew Douglas, known as Dougie, and I am the manager of Swansea Business Improvement District, based in Swansea City Centre, looking after Swansea City Centre, and as of this morning, 797 businesses in the city centre, and we've been there for 20 years now.
My name is Sarah Pearce. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of A&D Carbon Solutions, based in Morriston in Swansea. We've been part of the retrofit community for 12 years, so been there from the start of ECO, and are dealing with all the changes within that arena. So delighted to be here today.
I'm Russel Greenslade, CBI Director for Wales.
Wonderful. Short and sharp, Russell. A man who needs no introduction, I'm sure. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's going to be a really interesting conversation, I'm sure. The first topic we've got on the agenda is the changes to business rates in Wales. And in April, of course, we've got the revaluation of all commercial properties for the first time since 2010. So let's start by asking, is this actually what needs to happen for business rates, or is there a complete rethink that needs to be had once potentially a new Welsh government comes into post? Who wants to start us off?
I'll come in on that one. I think we've been, CBI, we've been saying a rates reform is needed, whether that be Wales and UK, because obviously rates have devolved here. Mm-hmm. But it needs a total reform on the business rate side of it. And our CBI members have been feeding back into our discussions on that as well.
Mm-hmm. So what are your members' main concerns at the moment? It's
the cost of doing business, of which business rates is one as well. Obviously, it's the token reductions in business rates are very welcomed, one of the most recent ones, but something more needs to be done on it so businesses can plan accordingly, because cost of business are at the moment at the 30% high over the last 30 years as well. So something needs to be done on business rates so us as businesses can grow the economy and create new jobs.
Dougie?
Yeah, the bids have been working quite closely with the CBI on business rate reform to try and make that change. The token that's come out recently, the 15% reduction for business rates for hospitality businesses, sounds very good, but you've got to remember that they're taking away the 40% reduction from the COVID side of things. We are at the situation now where I have businesses in the city centre whose business rates monthly is higher than their rent. And it's just not sustainable to continue going on this. And some of the changes that are coming in April, I have one national business who was looking at a tripling of their monthly outgoing because of the changes to multipliers and the revaluation of the businesses. The revaluation, the 2026 revaluation, has put a lot of people's rents up, rateable values up, and the reduction just takes them back to where they were, essentially. So it's something that needs to be completely changed, a new system entirely, and if we can find the answer to that, then we wouldn't have to work again. We could down on that for the rest of our lives, but the system needs to change because at the moment it's just not sustainable.
Is anyone else?
I echo Doug's sentiments, actually. I think it's a topic that has been widely debated in our group, but also in our showroom with our clients, because lots of our clients are business owners and have great concerns around this. I think it is a double-edged sword. There's the reevaluation process that has created an anxiety around what's to come, but also, as we've already mentioned, the end of the support mechanisms that were in play post-COVID, and it's really struck in fear actually across many businesses. And it just feels a little unfair that this tariff is in place, or this taxation is in place based on the footprint of a business predominantly, rather than it being revenue or even performance derived. Regardless of how a business does, they're going to be footed with a bill that is, as Dougie's mentioned, is in some cases more significant than the cost of renting or owning the building. So it most certainly feels like some kind of reform is needed to just modernise it and bring it back into a line with what the challenges our economies face day in, day out right now.
Sarah?
There is also, apart from the commercial angle to all of this, there's also legislative ones, such as the changes to the EPC registers in commercial properties. So there's also other challenges which ultimately will have a cost as well to keep up with those legislations. So for example, by 2030, every commercial property in Wales has to have an EPC registration of a C or above, which again will come at a company cost potentially. So it's about looking for solutions with regards to how else we can support businesses, not only just with regards to rates, etc., but also with potential offerings and how we can look at costs of businesses in general.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll certainly broaden the conversation out in a moment. But just to underpin a few points, 2/3 of all businesses in Wales at the moment pay no business rates, but there's been £1 billion worth of relief given since 2020. Now, obviously, that includes the pandemic as well, but doesn't that just show that if there's so much support needed to get through the system as it is, then perhaps it isn't working at the moment?
Completely agree. If you look at Swansea City Centre, since I've been involved in the bid, I joined in 2020, and one of the first things we started doing was collating how many businesses were opening and closing in the city centre. January, we hit a milestone in Swansea City Centre where we opened the 200th business in the city centre. I say we as the collective city. And you just look at that growth and that level of investments coming into the city and think, how much bigger would that be if businesses weren't at the point where they were struggling to pay all of the bills with energy costs and rates costs and national insurance and all of these sides of things. I've got one business in the city centre, for example, that is 70% ahead of their business plan, 18 months into opening, and are still struggling to make a profit because of everything that is being piled on top of them with national insurance and the changes to their business rates. That just can't work. That needs to change quite quickly. The business rate system with the re-evaluation needs to be looked at and changed. Energy costs is a huge factor into business, into growth. We've also got businesses in the city centre that are prepped, ready, completed to open, but can't because of the change to the national insurance contributions, means they can't afford to staff them. So luckily, they've got other businesses that can sustain that one there. But it's not just business rates. There are other factors that kick in, leaseholding and all of that side of things. But the biggest complaint I get from businesses a lot is business rates, and also relief on business rates when businesses are going through, they take on a new unit, they need 3 months to kit it out, and they're paying business rates from day one because the landlord has claimed an empty unit relief while it's been a let process. So they're going in, they're not making any money. They're paying builders to come in and fit the thing out, and then they're getting faced with a bill of £1,000 a month or more for the business rates when they can't recoup that. So that system needs to be looked at as well.
Mm-hmm. It's also quite a complicated system in the way that it's collected. It's going through the Treasury, then through the Welsh Government, obviously, then through to local authorities. But I wonder what everyone's opinions are on what a reformed business rates system would look like.
That's a big question. I think that's what needs to be worked through. It needs to be informed by businesses, but that's one thing which is very clear, that it needs to be absolutely informed by business what will work. I think in Wales, we're not asking for any favours. We're asking for a level playing field as well, from a cost of business perspective. At the moment, business rates is one factor, or the cost of business rates, bottom line hitting, is detracting from continued investment here in Wales by existing businesses. Businesses do look at the bottom line, as Dougie said. So that's a big question. I think we all need to be involved with that, as well as CBI are working on that as well with members, and as Andrew's engaging with us as well as other members pan-UK. I know it's evolved here in Wales, so we are looking at what can be done. But it needs to be fairer and more meaningful reform, I think is the word, which I would suggest at this moment in time.
With the Senate election on the horizon, then, Russell, the CBI, presumably you're going to be having conversations with all political parties wanting business owners' votes. Are you hoping that those conversations will be around reforming the business rate system?
Yes, it's the cost of business. If you, it's taken barriers away to do business as well, which is more of a generic approach to it. But as Dougie has said, the cost of business is energy costs, national insurance contributions. The list goes on. Business rate is one of those, and I think it's now a bit of a perfect storm when you've had the national insurance contributions coming in, rightly so, the living wage increases as well, but that's added now business rates as well, and that's the uncertainty in the business community and our membership of what's next. And businesses, we all need certainty as well in order they can grow and invest and create jobs. So yes, we are talking, or I'm talking to those political leaders, whoever may come into power or be in power, take the barriers away to do business, and maybe utilise our devolved powers more here in Wales, because business rates is devolved to a certain level, but we understand the Treasury impact on that as well.
I completely agree with Russ's point. There probably isn't a there won't be a one-size-fits-all solution for this, but it most certainly feels like there needs to be a consultative approach as to what's a more fair and apportionate way to run this scheme. Because right now, with everything else that's going on, as we've already talked about, so we've got national insurance, we've got minimum wage, we've got right now daily. I'm seeing communications from our suppliers that their costs are increasing. So whilst we're evaluating our costs and what it takes us to open this business every day, our suppliers are doing exactly the same, having to increase what they charge us, and we're in a position where we're having to burden that cost at times because we're in a market that's highly competitive. We want to make sure that our clients have a fair and appropriate price to pay for anything they come and visit us for, yet our margins are being squeezed tighter and tighter every day. And actually, there comes a time when there's possibly a consideration for when there's an opportunity to maybe expand or grow our business, whether that's with an additional site or whether that's with some further employment. We'd probably have to look at it much harder right now than we probably have in the past. And that doesn't feel like a long-term sustainable position for any of us to be in, actually, because we all want to see our economy grow. We all want to see our country prosper and businesses thrive. It gives employment and it gives us money to spend, in each other's businesses. But I think unless we get this right, it could have the opposite effect.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. And in that time, we've learned it's not just about cars, it's about the impact we leave behind. We believe in driving change, supporting the people around us where we live and work. Because when our communities thrive, we all do. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands. But what drives us goes far beyond the road. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
I agree with the panel's comments in regards to this needs to be comprehensive. Any sort of reform needs to be consultative. It needs to be open and honest discussion based. However, I also think that there's a timing issue with this in the sense of this cannot continue for longer than is necessary. There is an urgency to it. Businessin Wales is at that critical point for many reasons, be it political, be it financial, all those layers to that. But I do think that it's something that needs to start quite quickly, because otherwise we are going to find ourselves again on the back foot and in an economy where, we're still fighting for it.
So let's move on to the hospitality relief that's been announced in the last couple of weeks when it comes to business rates. 15% reduction, that's going to bring in around 4,400 businesses. It's something that obviously hospitality business owners were worried about, but is it actually enough? Have they still got the short straw here?
100%. 100%. The big one, there's that and the policy 15% reduction. You've got to bear in mind that they've just lost 40. Mm-hmm. So it's actually an increase. On top of that, you've got they also have to deal with beer duty, and all of those taxes as well. We are at a point now where the larger venues are operating on supermarket margins when it comes to their alcohol sales. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. The hospitality industry nationally is in trouble, not just in Wales, but across the whole of the country. The biggest example of this is when you got, Saturday mornings, I like to have a sit down, watch James Martin with a cup of coffee. And when you've got celebrity chefs on Saturday Kitchen talking about how hard it is in the hospitality industry on a cooking show, you've got a problem. And that's where we're up to. I've got examples here of per square metre hospitality businesses paying 54% more per square metre on business rates than large retailers because of the difference in the way their rateable values are calculated. Hospitality is also hit by the high energy costs. It's also hit by, it's a very staff-heavy industry, so they're hit by the national insurance and the minimum wage costs, and they just need a bit more support to get through. The big conversation amongst the pub watch scheme that the bid operates, which is where the next one is on Monday, is they're all fighting, they're doing their best not to get to £7 a pint, because they know at that point the industry starts to contract even more. And I know people that are in Swansea are selling beer at a loss to stop to get to that margin. So they need an extra shot in the arm, whether that's a reduction in business rates for hospitality, a reduction in alcohol duty just for hospitality industry, keep it the same as it is now for in supermarkets, but reduce it to encourage people to go into pubs. Something. But I don't know what the answer is, but there is something that needs to be done to support them.
Well, when we were talking in the green room, Dougie, you had a fascinating stat just to share how much of a price of a pint is actually going to the government or indeed going through back in taxes.
In Wales, the figure that I've been given by some of my businesses in the area, 55p to 60p per pound that goes across the bar goes back to the government. In England, it's closer to 40 to 45p. But in Wales at the moment, for every pound you put across the bar, 55p minimum-ish goes to the government in various different taxes for business rates, beer duty, national insurance. And then they've got to make their money off the rest of that and pay their staff and pay their electricity bill and buy their stock and all of that side of stuff. You also get a situation with hospitality where the breweries seem to treat some of their venues as disposable, and they tie venues into deals, so you have to buy everything from them. I've got 2 venues in town whose deal with their brewery means that they have to buy vodka from their brewery, but they can buy it cheaper in Tesco's. So there's things like that. The whole industry needs a bit of a shake and a bit of a look at to try and get it to the point where it's sustainable. We're looking at closing pubs at a frightening rate across the country. Now, a figure that was thrown at me is that potentially by the end of the year, 100,000 jobs nationally are going to go in the hospitality industry. If you had a factory in Port Talbot that was closing and 100,000 people were going to lose their jobs, you'd have politicians coming out of the woodwork to try and save it, and there's nothing for hospitality.
But it's the cultural impact as well, isn't it? It's so much more than just a business, a pub or a club or whatever it may be, a live music venue. There's so much more that society gets as a result of them being open. So it is quite a worrying time. I wonder if anyone wants to come in on that.
I think from our point of view, obviously we've got a very broad membership in the CBI, from SME through to PLCs. Business is the cost of business rates is across the board. It is important hospitality because they're being hit hard, as Dougie has said. But we've got to remember business rates hit all sectors. You know, for an example, yourself, isn't it? It's a cost of business. So if we can reduce the cost of business, that's going to take the barriers away, reduce the bottom line, increase profitability. They can invest more, and that might be in energy or new energy transition as well. Energy security goes on, in more skills development, more apprenticeships, for instance. So it is a vicious circle. We've got to reduce the bottom line to doing business here in Wales, and business rates is very much part of that as well.
I think there needs to be an element of common sense as well when we're looking at these, reforms that everyone keeps talking about. Again, there needs to be an element of sense. Dougie's just given a great example there, where the legislation's in place, where we're getting our own way of profitability. So hospitality sector would get it cheaper in Tesco's, for example. I find that astonishing that we're actually getting our own way of making any profit, and that for me is quite disappointing and quite concerning when you're thinking about the changes that are needed. This isn't going to be easy. I think we've established that during this discussion already, but for me there needs to be an element of common sense.
I may upset a few on the panel now because there's a biased view coming here. I think I'm from the most beautiful part of our country, being Pembrokeshire. And being from an area that is heavily reliant on hospitality and tourism in particular. And having lots of friends who run pubs, restaurants, and so on in and around Tenby and Saundersfoot, just listening to and understanding the challenges that they're going through right now, and seeing how incredibly hard they work to be successful. And as Dougie's mentioned, the context of 50 to 60 pence of every pound not going directly back into their business. It's no surprise. I read quite an alarming stat last night. So I think unemployment in the 16 to 24-year age category is up about 16% year on year. And I think this is appropriate that what we're talking about here today is absolutely attributed to be a driver behind that, because the businesses that we're referring to, especially in hospitality, are businesses that would typically employ that segment of our society. And I think it's quite a sort of short-term view to not take some real strong action to address that, because that's the population of our society that if we don't do anything about, we're going to have to support in another way. We're going to have to support in terms of unemployment, financial assistance, and some skills training that we're forced to do, rather than actually in an industry that we want to grow. So, there's never been a greater motivation really to look at some kind of reform, not just for hospitality, for everyone. But yeah, it's an industry that's crying out for it right now.
Sorry, Russell, you look like you want to get in on this.
Yeah, that's right. It's just, I think one thing we have to put in perspective as well, obviously the likes of your Tesco's, your Asda, Sainsbury's, they all pay business rates as well. So it's a knock-on effect, is it the cumulative impact, as they say. But what we're saying is that if you can reduce the costs, business employ more, employees pay more tax, which then goes into the government, that then could use that money to improve business circumstances as well. So it's that circle. So that's the philosophy behind it. You make it cheaper for businesses to do business. They employ more. They pay more taxes. Goes into government, comes round, invest in infrastructure or other stuff as well. So which will then help build the economy. And the other side of it, we've got the industrial strategy happening here in Wales, which is fantastic to happen. That will employ more people. But again, those businesses here or coming here will have to pay business rates, and it will be on their radar as well.
So now to go on to something that actually, Jamie, you were referencing a little bit earlier, the amount of unemployment between, I think it's 16 to 24-year-olds is 17%, people who are not in training, employment or education. And when it comes to, say, the minimum wage rise or indeed the national living wage rise, that has a huge impact on younger people because that tends to be the jobs that they are getting. So I wonder what the panel's thoughts are, whether I suppose the population would say any rise in the minimum wage is a good thing, but perhaps what people don't realise is that just raising the minimum wage doesn't necessarily mean that more people are going to be in better paid jobs.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. That's not just a number, it's generations of trust built on shared values, because family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose to stand with, and that's what matters to us. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands, and trust, that's at the heart of it all. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing a legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
Could start by saying about the industry that I'm in, for example, so very construction-led type industries. The fallout rate for an apprentice within that industry is 75%, which I find is absolutely astonishing when we talk about opportunities for youngsters and opportunities for people to retrain, etc. That is the statistic, and that is within the whole of Wales, which I find is very, astonishing, really. So when you talk about the impact of that, then I think that that's something that we should bear in mind. There's a massive ripple effect with regards to giving young people opportunities, unemployment, etc. But it's about making those apprenticeships, in my view, sustainable. The cost of that, putting in an apprenticeship, for example, for 3 years. So if I've got somebody maybe in their early 20s who are looking to do an apprenticeship, perhaps didn't do so well in college, etc., and now finding themselves or looking for a construction apprenticeship, and are then having to have 3 years on that minimum wage, I think that's quite impactful for their lives. And a lot of that dropout, when we are consulting in the education sector with why the dropout rate is so high, the feedback is often, I can't afford to be on minimum wage for 3 years. So therefore we end up then with unskilled labourers who are then taking just a generic labouring job without doing anything in regards to qualification, because that pays more. So I think there needs to be a rethink in regards to how people, young people generally, but apprenticeships as a whole, are funded, how they're structured, and the time of that, and how long it takes for somebody to become qualified through an apprenticeship route.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Sarah. And apprentices is something that we're really passionate about in our industry, because we recognise that our technicians are incredibly skilled. To become a technician, a qualified technician, they've got to go through 3 years of training. And then there's training and qualification pathways within the brand to become experts right the way up to master technicians. To get to a master technician's level within our industry, it's generally sort of 10 years training on top of their 3 years NVQ level, which will surprise most people. And I think your point is particularly pertinent around what happens with unskilled labour, because it's all well and good saying that, right, a minimum wage increase is a positive thing for the economy, but actually there's a real risk that it causes what I'd say is like a wage compression, in that, right, we're bringing people into our business that are unskilled but have a role to play, but we've got people in our business who've perhaps done 10, 15 years of training that then disproportionately paid potentially in comparison to someone who's unskilled. Yet we can't just keep paying more and more and more if we can't realise a greater revenue return and profit opportunity for ourselves, and on top of all the other costs that we're expected to burden as a business. So again, I think at face value it feels like it's a positive thing, but again, perhaps maybe a little bit short-sighted in that it's not as simple as just saying, right, great news, we're going to pay everybody a little bit more money. Because unless we're going to recognise that right the way through our businesses and all the different levels that people work within, it becomes unfair.
Exactly that point. If you look at the member of staff that I have working for us now within the bid, Jacob, absolutely fantastic member of staff, brilliant, fresh from university, couldn't do my job without him. However, since he's been with me, minimum wage has gone up twice, and I've only been able to increase his salary once. But bid works on a fixed budget, so his role and what he does for us is being eroded by the minimum wage coming up. Technically, every time the minimum wage goes up, I should be increasing it to keep him that far away above. I just can't do it. With the bid sat down, we had the low pay commission come down to see us earlier on, middle of last year, and I sat down with them and I explained this situation to them, and we've worked with them to try and get our point across that minimum wage is fantastic and it needs to exist, and I agree with minimum living wage and all of that. It just needs to be accepted that by constantly increasing it, as you say, you're eroding away that difference between someone who is unskilled and skilled. It's an ongoing issue, particularly within coming back to the hospitality side of things, where you've got people pulling pints now who are on £23,000 a year. Is that right? I don't know.
And I suppose the other key thing here is not just the actual wages themselves. When you're talking about hiring somebody, you've got national insurance on top of it and covering them if they go off sick, for example. So actually hiring somebody is not just their salary, and it's probably never been more expensive to hire somebody on £25,000 a year, considering what the actual cost of hiring them is, right?
I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing for members is labour costs as well. And yeah, it's hitting across sector as well, because if you want to employ more, you've got to pay more. And as the business grows, there is a ceiling, because then it comes to the cost viability and cash flow, which is what running a business is all about. So labour costs are up there with the cost of business generically as well. Then you've got energy costs, but labour costs are definitely there as well. Because, as you said, national insurance contributions been added, living wage we just discussed, and everything else that goes with it as well.
You mentioned energy there, Russell. We'll move on to energy. We want to keep costs down when it comes to our utilities. That's the same for businesses and households, of course. But we also want to keep a circular economy and making sure that we are supporting businesses around us as well. Sarah, I'm going to come to you first on this, because you are the person who's dealing with this most directly. But just how easy is it for businesses to keep energy costs down at the moment? Well,
it's, again, a hot topic at the moment across the board, and unfortunately the answer to that is it's quite difficult. We've discussed a lot today about the price of businesses in general, but when it comes to utilities and energy in particular, they only seem to be going one way, and that way is definitely up, unfortunately. So when it comes to the sector, it's something that we need to look at, and there are solutions out there. But like I mentioned earlier, what we are seeing is not only the cost changes, but the legislation changes as well that businesses are having to keep on top of constantly. So it becomes a bit of a minefield in regards to, are we compliant as well? It's not only are we able to afford it, there's not only a cost implication, but there's then a compliance implication. So these ripple effects throughout the businesses can be quite scary. Especially within the energy sector, for example. So the EPC changes that are coming in, so in regards to the energy efficiency schemes, like I said, by 2030, every commercial business will need an EPC register of at least a C rating. Now, the cost of that to a business to achieve that type of EPC rating is obviously there. There's lots of ways in which a building or business can look to reduce those costs, and there are schemes out there. So I think, as well as, the scary scene in regards to those costs going up and up, there are solutions out there. And what I would like to say is there is a bit of hope, in the sense of there are solutions, there are companies out there within this arena that can assist. And I think that, again, within Wales, there may be a little confusion with regards to where those solutions are, because what Wales is a fantastic example of small, medium enterprise. But what that side effect is that there are little silos of pockets of where to go for information. So there is definitely a communication piece to this as to what the solutions are and where they can get some help for those energy discussions.
Do you want to enlighten us on some of those then?
So, again, being part of the business community within Swansea, for example, we've had to pivot the business. We were in the eco arena. The scheme side of things hasn't been as it was when we were involved 12 years ago when it all started. So we've had to look at other ways as a business we operate. And one of those decisions was to pivot into a commercial solar offering, for example. So we are now able, and we are the only ones in Wales who are offering solar with no upfront costs whatsoever, absolutely free of charge to install. We're busting all those myths of, will I own my own roof, for example, and all those lovely things that solar has been through previously. So the industry in general is evolving constantly. The technology is amazing. So having the offering that we have to be able to offer commercial businesses, especially anybody who owns a building, for example, any commercial landlords, to be able to offer them free solar is a fantastic thing to be able to do, but not only for the environmental impact, all of those lovely things within the eco industry, there's also the practicalities of the legislation changes. The quickest way to up an EPC rating by any of the other measures within the retrofit arena is solar.
Interesting. Does anyone else want to come in on energy? Because it's not just energy intensive businesses, for example, that are really struggling to pay for their utilities at the minute.
The K sector is a big one for us as well. We've seen an absolute, we've talked a lot about hospitality, for example, that's another one. But for us, the K sector is specifically one that is being affected by that. We all know the cost of K, for example. We all know there's a K crisis out there. And the utility side of things for those businesses is definitely an issue.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years, and we've never stood still. Because for us, it's not just about where we've been, it's about where we're going. We believe in progress, embracing innovation, investing in technology, and moving towards a more sustainable future for everyone. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's most forward-thinking motor brands. But our drive is always to the future. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving environment, isn't it? You know, because we're involved with the energy transition, energy security side of it, and our most recent meeting in North Wales really hit home. There's an awful lot going on in North Wales, and there's also a lot going on in beautiful Pembrokeshire as well, which so there's a lot of stuff to be I said there is hope here in Wales as well, that we've got geographically, we're well positioned as well for that energy power transition as well. The contractor difference, we've had contractor difference awarded for North Wales and in South Wales as well. So that's something that I hope is going to be there. That's big kilowatt power, and there's going to be investment here as well. To put it in perspective, the flow windmills you will see out and sea are the footprint of the Principality Stadium, and they're about the size of the Eiffel Tower. And there's going to be 250 of them. So, that shows the size and the scale of what power could be coming in to help reduce the energy costs of businesses. But that's a long-term strategic plan. At the moment, energy costs, whether it be high energy costs, high energy business costs like a manufacturing, or a business like this, which would be lower energy cost than a huge manufacturing plant, it's still a major cost. It's still eating into the bottom line consistently. Solar is another big thing which is coming through, and a lot more about that, but also wind, not just offshore, but a wind as well. And again, we got that in Wales. And of course, there are still talks about the Dragon project as well, down in Neath Talbot and obviously in Swansea as well. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. So there is hope, but in the short term, energy costs are still number one, and that's across sector and across business.
One of the things that we do at Swansea Bid is that we hold drop-in sessions where businesses can come and talk to us, and we bring in experts in various different fields. The one that is always popular is then we have an energy broker in, and we've always got people coming in looking to try and change their deals and trying to reduce those costs. And it's a huge cost to businesses. Sometimes some of the businesses tell me how much they're paying a month, and I have to have a little bit of a sit down because you just, wow, okay, really? Again, it's, as Russ has mentioned several times, it's that cost to business, that barrier to trade. Something needs to be looked at. All the projects that are going on in Pembrokeshire and South Wales with the barrage and all of these different things to try and bring our own power in and reduce those costs can't come quick enough.
And now let's just move on to our final topic. It's a very simple question, but one that I think if you haven't already been listening to what our panel have been saying, that you probably get a good old answer. But so I'll ask everybody individually and maybe ask them to expand on their thinking behind this. So I'll tell you what, I'll start with yourself, Dougie. Is it more expensive to do business in Wales than it is in England?
Yes. There's not, everything that we've said around this table for the last half hour, it just goes to prove it, yes. And having said that, a lot of those pressures aren't necessarily Welsh-only issues. National minimum wage isn't only a Welsh issue. But yes, it is more expensive to trade in Wales. Anecdotally, I don't know how true this is, but I have been told of a story of a bar up in Wrexham that is on the border, Wrexham-Chester area, that is looking to move across the road because the other side of the road is England. Now, how true of that is, I don't know, but that's a story that I have been told. So, when you get to that sort of situation, it's crazy.
Are they going to try and just pick the building up and move it?
Well, yeah, I'm assuming they're going to move everything across in wheelbarrows. But that's a story that I have been told that is the difference it can make. And it's a situation that we need a level playing field, as Russ has mentioned, if we are looking to expand our business in our country and make our country the powerhouse that it should be. We need to be on the level field. We need to be able to trade and compete with the other countries in the UK.
I'm not so sure whether it is as simple as is it more expensive to do business in Wales than anywhere else, but perhaps I'd rather look at it more sort of introspectively and think about are we operating the best way we possibly can, and are we doing everything we can to allow our businesses and our own economy to thrive. And I think if we start looking at it a little bit more like that, then we've probably got a better chance of impacting some kind of change. I think if we just compare, we might not get what we need. But if we reflect on it a little bit deeper and think about, right, what can we really do? What are we in control of that we can change, that can allow us to grow our businesses, to maybe employ more people, to pay our staff more money, to then, as we've alluded to put money back into that whole circular economy piece. I think we've got a better chance of success.
Sarah?
I think, I agree with everything that's been discussed in this point already. I think it is more expensive to do business in Wales. But for an example, from my own experience with where I am now, we are doing more business in England than we are in Wales. So we're not actually supporting the local economy, technically, and there's arguments about that. I think this is a complex issue. I don't think it's going to be resolved quickly, even though I do believe it needs to be addressed in a timely manner. But I do think we need to get back to basics, wondering whether we're getting our own way as a nation in regards to supporting our own economy, and be that legislation, be that red tape, be that attitude. I don't know what the answer is exactly. I think it's a very complex one, but I think they're all connected.
And final word from Russell.
From Bob, Welsh businesses are resilient and very ambitious. That's what we're finding, and we're very proud of that here in Wales. They want to invest, we want to innovate and create jobs in our communities. That's the bottom line of it. But to unlock that potential, we really do need a pro-growth environment, and that's what we've all been discussing today. What is a pro-growth environment? How can we improve our businesses? Working in partnership with government. It is a partnership approach. And when you have business and government working in tandem and step by step, it's a very powerful partnership. And we need to do more of that as well. So I think the impact of costs and works, it's just genuine partnership with business. It'll be interesting to see what happens in our elections here in Wales, as you touched on earlier on. So at the moment, like anything with elections, there is that uncertainty as well. And that's what we're picking up. So what you'll find is our businesses may not be investing in so much at the moment. They're waiting to see what happens. And there was two humps that we experienced. One was the Chancellor's budget previously in 2025. And the next hump we're experiencing now is what's going to happen politically here in Wales. Just we'll wait and see. So I think you will have an injection of businesses once business rates is looked at, as what we're discussing today. But generally, that pro-growth environment, which we need here in Wales, it's not all bad in Wales. We're a growing economy. We've got a lot of positives here in Wales. As I said, there's a lot of investment coming in from the industrial strategy from bigger companies. They employ a lot more people. And then we can help grow the economy for the communities around it as well. So an answer to your question about being more expensive in England, from a business rates perspective, that's what I'm led to believe, but it's more than that. It's very much what you were saying. How can we improve our businesses here in Wales and take ownership on ourselves? I don't think that will come until we know the outcome of the elections.
Fascinating. Well, we will wait and see. Thank you so much to this fantastic panel, Jamie, Dougie, Sarah, Russell. Thank you all so much for your time and fascinating insights into our topic here, which is, of course, the cost of doing business. Do make sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned to the Business in Wales podcast. Until next time, take care. the Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales.